And we're live.
Hey, everybody. Capt Ron here, back again for another episode of Cleared for, no, I've been doing so many classes. FearlessFlight Live, our weekly Facebook show. And we are here to help anybody who has a fear of flying, or anybody who might know somebody has a fear of flying, or if you just want to find out our opinion on what's current in the aviation world. We would be glad to share that with you. And on tonight's agenda, if I can find my slides. Well, okay, and we are, I am sharing, correct, Peter? Or
not yet.
Not yet. Okay. We'll know. There we go.
There we go.
Welcome everybody again, and this, like I said, this is our weekly live show. Hopefully some of you have been here before, and welcome to anybody new. If you're new, either watching us live or looking at the replay, we encourage you to leave a note there, put a post up, say hi, ask a question. And speaking of questions tonight, that's going to be our high priority. We're gonna talk about some things we got going on. I want to talk briefly about the Clear for Takeoff 101. I should have put in person. That's the class that I do here in Phoenix every month, with the exception of I skip July and August because people are out there flying. And we'll talk about that a little bit. And tonight we're going to rely on you. We're going to get lazy and have you do some talking if we can. At least through the remarks, and maybe we'll come up with some questions to ask you. We're going to talk about the Clear for Takeoff. Should it be 301 for Burbank? No. Should be the Burbank class coming up on October 21st. And we've got a couple of things in the news there. And then, as always, we'll field your questions. We'll mention the Birds of a Feather group. Many of you have joined and have become aware of us. I'm surprised when people contact me for a free 15-minute coaching session, the number of people who have found either the weekly show or the Birds of a Feather there. So I'm really grateful for that, and keep those cards and letters coming, as they say. We love the new blood and the new energy, and it's the best way we can keep this a dynamic group, is to have your participation in there. So, okay. All right. So the Birds of a Feather, I'm sorry, I want to talk a little bit about the 101 class that I had last weekend. Thanks to all of you who showed up for the class. We had a really good, had a lot of people sign up, always have some no-shows, but had a really good turnout. And I think the people who were there really enjoyed themselves. At least they told me that. Maybe they didn't want to hurt my feelings, but no, we are really had a lot of enthusiasm. And what I do in that class is we just take full advantage of the fact that Southwest Airlines lets us use a Boeing 737 at the gate here at the Phoenix airport, one Saturday out of the month. We can't do the class until 6 o'clock at night because they don't have any airplanes on the ground that are going to spend the night there until that time. But when they do, and we get on the airplane, people really enjoy that. It's amazing the number of people that falter just coming down the jetway. You see that claustrophobia, or as we learn now, a new word, cliffrophobia. I think, if I pronounced that right. Did you talk about that last week, Peter? No?
Cliffrophobia? No, we did not.
Yeah.
But it's a tongue twister, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I was talking to a fearful flyer last week, and she asked me if I'd ever heard of that, and I had not. And I apologize. I should have brought it up and spelled it. It's CLEITHROPHOBIA, claustrophobia. And what it means is it's a fear of being trapped. And so it really is a much more relevant term to describe what most of you describe when you tell me that you're afraid of being trapped in the airplane. We've always referred to that as claustrophobia, but I think I'm at least going to add that into our discussion a lot more, because it seems to much more aptly describe the state of mind that people are in, and it's really what 80 to 90% of you report out there. And related to that, the airplane's a great place. By the time we get done spending an hour and a half, 2 hours on the airplane in the Cleared for Takeoff 101 in-person class here in Phoenix, like I did Saturday night, people are really, really relaxed. And I make fun of myself, make a few jokes, and that helps lighten the load there. But people feel free to ask their questions, and they really do a nice job learning how to mitigate their sense of overwhelm. And now, true, we don't move the airplane. In fact, some of them make me promise that we won't move the airplane when we get on. But it's really powerful to see what just a little bit of effort like that can do for people. And speaking of getting on the airplane, when we do the Burbank to Sacramento flight on October 21st, the night before, we are going to have do our pre-flight briefing from the new Air Hollywood studios up in Valencia, California, where my friend Talat has relocated. And we're going to be back on a mock-up, which he has there. It's a wide body mock-up, and anybody who's in the class will be sitting on that and desensitizing that for the flight the next morning. And for those of you who can't make it, whether you're in LA or whether you're anywhere else in the world, if you would like to share in what that briefing looks like, we have an option for you, and because we're going to live stream that. And so if you choose to, you can participate in that. And Dieter, I'm sure, is posting a link as we speak, or will by the time we get done with the show notes here. So much for that.
I've posted the links, and just to be clear, this live class is on Friday, October 20th. And so if you are not either in Los Angeles or you're not gonna fly with us on the Saturday, you still have the opportunity to tune in live, and we'll make the replay obviously available as well. And Jim Duke just said the experience at the studio makes all the difference in the world. And Jim Duke, who is currently on a cruise ship in Alaska, he just flew up there to Seattle not that long ago. He was at one of the Air Hollywood classes as a student, and then came back as a volunteer the next year. And I agree with Jim. There is literally nothing like it out there, to be able to go into the studio and kind of like lose that sense of being in a warehouse, and just all of a sudden people start experiencing the same symptoms, and that's exactly what you need. But this time with the guidance of Captain Ron, and I think Captain Eric will be there. Hopefully Flight Attendant Diane can make it. So this is really your best shot. So come on down, or join us live over the internet.
Yeah. And if you have any questions, I'm going to throw some out here that came in this week. And if you have some, we love them. That's what we're here for. It's much more interesting to talk about what you want to talk about than it is for what we want to talk about. One of the questions that I got in here is the biggest trigger. And we talk about triggers. Triggers are those events, circumstances, or situations that activate the fight or flight mechanism, the amygdala in our brains. So anything that gets your fear going is a trigger. And that's where we start in Fearless Flight. We start with your triggers, and we work off of that. And this person said, biggest trigger for me is fear of falling. Falling happens to be one of the few not phobias, but fears that we are born with. Nobody has to teach you what it's like to be afraid when you fall. Another one is loud noises. And this person went on to say, I hate the feeling in your stomach when you on a roller coaster drop, and I would hate to experience that in a plane. Well, there's a little bit of that, but we don't drop as much as a roller coaster does. You probably couldn't prove that while you're in the airplane there. But the biggest drop that you'll ever get is maybe like 6 inches. It feels like a lot more. And what you notice is the drop, and you don't notice the fact that shortly after that, there's an updraft that supports you and pushes the airplane back up, because you're attuned to that falling sensation, like I said. And I think that's from our genetics, what we inherited from our ancestors. This person goes on to say, I've only flown once in my adult life, hit moderate turbulence in the whole flight, and the plane would occasionally drop a bit, and I was really scared that would start dropping more. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Once it starts happening like that, now it triggers your waiting for the other shoe to drop, quote unquote. And so now you're worried about it going on, even if you should get a bit of relief and it stops. And then the other fear, typical, I get overwhelmed by how cramped the airplanes are. Welcome to modern day aviation, unless you can afford to get up there and buy those premium seats. Usually people don't take elevators. This person says, I don't take elevators for the same reason. So we talk about that in the 201. We talk about it in the 301, and you get to practice it on the 301. So anybody out there. Another person wrote, taking off, this is because it's statistically when most accidents occur. So let's talk about that real quickly. That usually freaks people out when they look up where do most accidents happen. They put a question out there for a variety of sources, and people write back on takeoff or landing. Well, duh, that's when you're the closest to the ground. When would you expect the accidents to happen? It doesn't mean that it's inherently dangerous. It just means that that's where the complexity of flight really gets interesting, because when we take off, we got to take this big hunk of metal, and we've got to take it from nothing, which it won't fly, because if we brought it up, it would drop. And we got to get it to not only a minimum flying speed, but a safe flying speed, which is about 30% more speed and energy than what it would take just to get the airplane airborne. So things that disrupt or interfere with that process of acceleration from a stop to a safe flying speed are many for that. Once we get airborne, however, those engines are just pumping energy out, pumping that thrust out, and we accelerate, and quickly we got not only a little bit extra energy, but we got a lot of reserve out there. And the other end is the problem is in reverse. We got to take this airplane, it's got a lot of energy, we got to slow it down and get it stopped in the remaining runway. Otherwise, all your efforts to use an airplane to fly from A to B are not worth anything if we can't get you there alive. And so that's why. So don't get confused by the statement that most accidents happen on takeoff or landing, and key in on that and drive yourself crazy. Remember, that's a trigger. Okay, what's a trigger mean? It means that it triggers a level of activation of your inner sensibilities when it comes to common sense and rationality, but it doesn't necessarily equate to being in a real danger. Now, I'm not saying that the feelings aren't real to you. Of course they're real, but they're false experiences appearing real, FEAR. And that's an acronym that we use in all of our training materials out there. So, okay, another person wrote, changes during the flight, sharp turns, changes in attitude, turbulence, sounds, not knowing if the change means something is going wrong. You are negatively biased if you have an inclination to be afraid to fly. That means that you are on guard constantly, no less than if I took you up to the Empire State Building, stood you on the edge of the observation deck, and then kept shaking you, and you had to worry about whether I was going to shake you and push you and push you over the edge. You'd be constantly, literally on edge. And that's what anxiety does. That's what triggers do. They trigger that anxiety. So what this person is referring to is all of the unfamiliar sights, sounds, and sensations that happen on a typical flight. And the sensations, I've conjectured over the years that the number one trigger for people on an airplane in flight are the sensations, and that's due to G acceleration, moving in opposition to the direction that you're going, or the force of gravity holding you down there. Again, all these things are in the 101 course, and we review them when we do 301 flight, which we'll be doing coming up next month for both Burbank and in Phoenix here. If you live in Phoenix, I want to say a quick word. We have the flight, the Clear for Takeoff 301 flight in Burbank is going to take place on October 28th or 21st. And the following week, October 28th, we're going to have a flight from Phoenix to Burbank and back with myself and a few fearful flyers. And so if you live anywhere in the Phoenix area, let us know, because we got a special deal for you. We wanted to do that, and so for the people, I announced that at the class on Saturday night. Okay.
Ron, we have a question from
cool.
Darren. Darren said, by the way, Darren, let me know if you actually made it to the class in Phoenix, because I know you were asking in the Birds of a Feather, and unfortunately I didn't see the post in time to reply. But Darren is basically asking how well are the at the security or checked luggage security, I should say, people accidentally putting something in the suitcase that they shouldn't, because that's an interesting, I haven't seen that, but as per FAA, there is 1 fire of lithium batteries per week on American flights. So I was not aware of that. But then again, I also want to say there are many thousands of flights per day. So even if that one is true, that is an incredibly small number in percentage. Less than
that article you're referencing, Dieter, is that
I don't know if it's an article. That's just something Darren has put in the post.
Darren, let us know. Are they referring to fires in the cabin or in the cargo compartment?
I think it would be the cargo compartment, because the question specifically is how well do the scanners work checking the checked luggage, catching people accidentally putting something in a suitcase. And the reason is asking is because it's a flight coming up to Hawaii, and obviously, there's a long time to anywhere, basically. So he doesn't want anything to happen. So that's where the concern's coming from. That's where the question is coming from. So I'm not a TSA security person, but I will say I didn't really say just to give the stat. Okay, so the point is, my understanding is that these scanners are highly sophisticated and are catching probably more than 99.5% of all the stuff that's going through. So in terms of batteries and things that can catch fire. But Ron, maybe you have some other information.
Well, every person, when you check your luggage, you actually acknowledge both if you go to the kiosk and you get your boarding pass, it says right up there, I have not packed lithium-ion batteries in my suitcase, because that has been a source of a problem. The worst case was several years ago, even before I retired, so that's been 16 plus years ago. There was a fire on a UPS airplane, which is hauling cargo, and it started in the back. And by the time they landed safely or successfully, but it actually consumed the airplane. The fire consumed the airplane as it was. And the only thing that they could ascertain was that it was a whole pallet full of lithium-ion batteries. And one of the natures of lithium-ion is that it can start a cycle and create a thermal runaway. And that is why they would rather have you. They haven't prohibited having lithium ion. All your laptops and things are totally okay to carry in the cabin, because then they can fight the fire should it burst into flames with the onboard extinguishers. And so that's why I was curious whether he was looking for either a cargo compartment up there. But
I will say this: the question really ultimately, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being cautious, and we do want people to follow the rules.
Yeah.
But I also want to bring you back to why you're here and why you're hopefully here is because there's a part in you recognizing that the anxiety that you are experiencing, or as we say it here, the pain in your brain is not about the plane. The
Right.
anxiety that you're experiencing is due to whatever your triggers may be. And that would be actually cool if you could put that in the chat. And those triggers are either, in one of two categories. They're either mechanical or what we call emotional triggers. So it's either, the airworthiness of the pilots in the plane and, concerns of that technical nature, or more emotional, where you're worried about, your own airworthiness and keeping your own feelings in check. So that is really the crux of it. And so knowing what your triggers are would already, be a step in the right direction to what you can do before your flight. Don't wait until your flight. If you haven't had a 15-minute coaching call with Capt Ron, then at the very least do that. But we also have other free resources on the website as well. And depending on when your flight is, we actually have our monthly webinar coming up on September 21st. So I will put the link of that about that in the chat. Do you want to say anything more? Oh, Ron, you're muted or otherwise lost your sound. So yeah, I was just talking about the monthly group coaching webinar, and Ron, you can just chime in, and we'll see when we get you back. No, not yet. So every third Thursday of the month, we started it for our Cleared for Takeoff 201 online course students, but quickly realized that these webinars are a much more intimate way to dive into the heart of where fear of flying really lives, and where it really lives is inside of us. Because again, the reason it is a phobia or a fear, there's really no relation to the amount of incidents, especially in North America or on a tier 1 airline, and the intensity of your emotions and your thoughts negatively to your next flight. And so we in the webinars, we choose a topic every month, and this month we call it "The Sky is Falling." And if Capt Ron gets his audio back, then maybe he can talk to that a little bit more. But basically, we invite you to come in and be vulnerable in a safe and nurturing environment, and with other people that, just like group therapy tends to be, often share things that really resonate or really trigger something which can help you on your journey, to really making a headway in terms of not just finding out where the anxiety comes from, but also learning how to nurture yourself and how to help yourself when it comes up, because that's really what we want to learn. And hey, Oliver, we were just talking about the 301 class at Air Hollywood. Oliver is also one of those graduates from that 301 class. And Jennifer, I see you here too. Jennifer, if I'm not mistaken, you're gonna be also coming to the upcoming Air Hollywood on October 21st. Maybe Ron, I think Ron might have mentioned that you wanted to come. So, but anyway, the real key is, and I think, Oliver, if you can put that in the chat, maybe. Yes, you are coming, Jennifer. Awesome. Oliver is one of those heroes of mine. He's a firefighter, so he every single day puts his own life, on the line to save our lives. And what I've learned about people who do that, generally there's a certain persona that comes with that, and that doesn't always make it easy to look at some of the more challenging emotional stuff. But Oliver has had the courage and definitely the drive to do so, and it was just amazing to see his transformation through the class and then on the flight as well. And so if there's ever any question of whether or not, I think Susan Miglasio and also Sue Hopkins are two graduates of the 301 class in Boston. And Sue Hopkins actually didn't fly for, gosh, I think so it was 50 years, right? I mean, that is a pretty substantial time not to fly. And yeah, all of us said it was a great experience, and got a few more times to help others. And that is one of those things. If your life changes, then you wish for others that they change that they have the courage and they have the means, the tools, and the support to change their lives as well. And so that pay it forward is a really important aspect, and that's why we actually, in our Fearless Flight method, the third leg of our method is social support. Because when we are Oliver was asking when is the group therapy. It's on Thursday, September 21st. Ron, are you back? Oh, and he was back and then he left. So yeah, it's on September 21st. So where Susan says sign me up. Well, I'll put the link in there as soon as Ron either comes on. Oh, okay, Ron, are you back? Do you have sound? No joy. Well, I'm not really sure how to help you, but you know what? You might as well try and see whether or not you can come on. How do we join? Okay, I am just gonna share that link with you. Okay, so okay, so hopefully right there, perfect. And thank you, Oliver. I really appreciate the kudos. It was certainly not planned that nope, we still can't hear you. That Ron is losing his voice and going to bed. So well, if you can join us, Ron, maybe try that. Otherwise, I will just I'll just say that for those. Okay, so I'm just gonna wrap it up then for tonight. I do wanna remind everyone that next week we have Fearless Flight Live, the crew edition. So it'll be Captain Eric, Flight Attendant Diane, and myself. And we just this past week we started a segment that we call the top 10 strategies for dealing with claustrophobia on your next flight. And yeah, great relief picture. Yeah, thanks, Oliver. I appreciate it. So the the top 10 strategies for claustrophobia on your next flight. We're gonna dive into a couple of those next week. And so if you, especially if you're struggling with that, tune in. And you know, Captain Eric, or if you've ever watched him live, he is definitely a show to himself. So it'll be a lot of fun in the process. And lastly, for all those of you who have joined late, we do have our Cleared for Takeoff 301 in Los Angeles on October 21st. If you can't make it, actually, I want to say this. Ron and I checked the flights today. The flight from Burbank to Sacramento was $73. So $73. I think the return flight was $94. So it won't get cheaper than that. And the longer you wait, the closer we get to October 21st. Southwest knows you want to fly and accordingly raises the prices. So now is the time. I've already shared the link. So you just gotta enroll, pay the tuition, you get the flight information. And like I said, the flights right now is $173. So really can't beat that. Now let me just check the comments here. All right, Ron, are you here to say? Okay, I can't hear you. So let me just check the comments here. If anyone ever has a question about what items you can check or carry on, Ask TSA has a Facebook page and you can message them. They will reply. That's really cool information because we often talk about triggers. For a lot of people, one of those triggers is security, you know, and we actually had the TSA spokesperson for the Southwestern region on a few months ago, and I will find that number. Apparently there's a phone number and there's also a website, and you can, I think you might have to do this 48 hours before your flight. But if you feel anxious about that part, you can actually book on at most airports a time, and then you actually will be met by a TSA officer, and they will help you through that. So that's a pretty cool service. I was really surprised that the TSA offers that. But even they recognize that, you know, this is really a pretty dicey time for people. And I think there was a stat, more than 40 million Americans reportedly suffer from fear of flying. So you're not alone. And well, I hope at least in, not next week, but in a couple of weeks from now, Captain Ron's audio will work and he's going to be back on. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and thanks for joining. And I will see you next week, hopefully, for our Fearless Flight Live Crew Edition.